I was rinsing a chipped mug at the kitchenette sink when the mirror behind me smiled a full second after I stopped moving. Suspicion pushed at the back of my throat. I froze with soapy water in my hands and watched the face in the glass hold a grin that I did not make. For an instant I thought I had missed a muscle twitch. Then I heard the faucet click and the smile stayed. That is when the problem became a clear, physical thing. The glass was keeping a motion I had not given it. I stepped back and wiped my hands on a towel. I am careful with small things, keys, bills, the threads on the hoodie I lived in, so I tested the mirror the way I test anything that threatens routine. Small, repeated motions. I snapped my fingers twice, then clapped. The reflection clapped a beat later. Suspicion turned to a fast, narrow panic that made my mouth dry. I set the mug down deliberately and took my phone from the counter. I dialed Maya before I thought Maya get here, I said, voice clipped. Now, she answered in 3 rings. What's wrong, Alex? She asked. I could hear her shoe scrape the floor over the line. The mirror smiled at me after I stopped. I said, just come. Please. I told her the address and hung up while my hands trembled enough to make the numbers smear on the screen. I told myself not to say words like impossible. I ran a wet finger down the mirror's edge and felt the cheap backing give a hair's width where the frame had been dinged. I pictured the reflection holding a different memory and forced that image into concrete terms. A mug on a windowsill I had never owned. A scar on my left eyebrow placed a millimeter to the right. Those details lived in the reflection and not in me. That was the conflict. Something in the glass carried specific facts I could not claim. Maya arrived 7 minutes later, knocking once at the door and then barging in with her jacket half on. Alex, what the hell? She started. She has blunt hands and blunt sentences. That bluntness steadied me. I pulled her to the kitchenette and demonstrated with a slow, exact motion. When I stopped, the glass held the motion and then repeated it a beat after. Maya's eyes narrowed. Stand back. Maya, don't move. She pulled her phone out and recorded while I mimicked a slow head tilt. The reflection delayed. Maya leaned in, pointing. It smiled again. Her voice went quiet after that. She flattened her hand to the mirror, matching my palm. The mirrored palm hovered, then completed the movement a heartbeat later. We both watched the echo like it was a person choosing to be late to its own actions. Maya has a practical way of naming things so we can handle them. Show me everything you know about this mirror, she said. Where do you get it? Any cracks before tonight? I told her I hadn't bought the mirror. It had been there when I moved in. Mr. Chen, the landlord, had left it leaning against a wall in the storage room. That was a fact I could check. We record it. Maya, if it's lying to us, we get proof. If it's not lying, we need to leave. That split choice, document or flee, pressed on my ribs. We scarred my phone. I had gone to bed earlier with the mirror in the bathroom cast in the glow of a single lamp. I found a short clip labeled voice memo from 2 nights ago that I did not remember recording. Maya tapped play and leaned forward. On the screen I saw me asleep on the couch, shoulders slack, mouth open. The mirror behind the couch showed a figure sit up. The figure in the mirror looked exactly like me, but it rubbed its eyes and then stared straight back at the camera. My hand, still on the couch, did not move. I jerked and knocked the phone from the coffee table. Play it again, I said, because proof feels like armor until it doesn't. Maya rewound and the clip looped. Her jaw worked. Alex, this is... She started and then stopped. Her voice tightened. She ran her fingers through her hair. I watched her face for the moment when she would decide whether to call someone else or trust me. She trusted me enough to stay. We set the phone on the kitchen table and watched the reflection in real time, trying to reconcile the clip with the present. The reflection in the bathroom glass now held a memory of sitting at a table I had never sat at, holding a different mug that had a blue chip and a faded sticker I had never seen. I said the sticker out loud, naming the shape so Maya and I could anchor ourselves to detail. It's a child's sticker, round red star, I said. Maya frowned. Alex, Maya, my mother had that exact sticker on a cup when I was a kid. She fumbled in her coat pocket and pulled out a small plastic token tied to a lanyard. She kept this after she sold the house in Vermont. My mom thought she lost it 10 years ago. I never told you about it, I swear. Her fingers closed on the token like it was evidence, and a confession in the same motion. Suspicion shifted under my skin into a different shape. Something older might be at work. It forced a change in our plan. We went for the phone's video settings and set it to continuous record. Maya, we done call the landlord yet, we document. If Chen sees us and gets scared, he'll do the wrong thing. She used Mr. Chen's surname like a lever, control through naming. I nodded and kept my hands clamped to the edge of the table. The doorbell rang before dawn. Mir. Chen stood in the hallway in his maintenance jacket. Too early and too steady. There was a noise complaint, he said. He carried the sort of neutral phrasing that landlords use to avoid questions that cost them money. He looked at the mirror for a measure of the room. What is that? He asked and pointed. I stepped forward and gestured for him to see. I asked Mir. Chen to shrug. He shrugged twice, casual. The mirror refused his shrug the second time. A patch of glass stayed still while the rest reflected movement. He blinked. Chen, Maya, using his name like a check. Look at this closely. He leaned in and touched the frame. The backing crinkled under his fingertips where the dent was. He frowned and muttered about settling in old buildings. Then he did something that mattered. He produced a small flashlight from his pocket and angled it across the glass. The light picked out a hairline seam on the mirror's surface, a faint pocket where the silvering seemed to pool. He stepped back. You should call someone. Ma. Chen, but his voice held professional distance. He did not want to be the one to escalate. I will log it. Don't make a mess. He turned and left, closing the door an inch, and then a click that made the apartment sound smaller. After he left, silence filled the gaps between breaths. The mirror tracked our movements but still showed the smile and the child sticker on an imaginary mug. I pushed for an experiment. We confront it together. I said, hands on glass, same motions, count out loud. Maya agreed, voice tight. We formed a line in front of the bathroom mirror, palms flat, the way you push a window. I pressed harder than I thought I would. The reflection matched each pressure a beat later, then began flashing images. A corridor with a yellow carpet I had never seen, a hand with a scar running fingers along a banister, a child's laughter recorded flat into a single long loop. Each image lasted a beat and then folded into the next. The reflection moved with deliberate slowness and showed scenes I could name. A hospital room with a metal tray, a bus with a cracked window, a gas station receipt for October 4th at midnight. I said the dates and places aloud, listing the signs so Maya could cross, check. She wrote them down on a napkin, October 4th. She said, that's when my cousin went missing in Vermont. He was on a bus, her voice lowered. The shared detail reshaped the problem again. The mirror wasn't random. It catalogued precise events that either belonged to other people or to a life not mine. I felt my control slipping towards something I did not own. My hands tightened on the frame until my knuckles creaked. The reflection showed a hand pressed to glass from the other side, the palm the same shape as mine but smoother. And then it did something I did not expect. It smiled without moving its mouth, a crease on the left cheek like a counterfeit of my scar. Maya grabbed my wrist. Don't let it pull you, she said. Her voice was low and rapid. Alex, if it tries to don't let go, use your keys. Keep them on you. She referenced objects the way sailors use knots. Me. Chen had gone into the hallway and called maintenance. We heard his voice through the wall, generic and distracted. The reflection tilted its head, timed to our breaths. It was testing us. I pressed my palm to the glass and said, stop. Who are you? The reflection raised a matching hand, but its fingers curled inward toward me, as if closing around something. It did not speak. Instead, the mirror emitted a faint, metallic delay that sounded like a voice swallowed by tape. Maya moved closer with the phone flashlight slicing the glass. The sound hummed under the light, a thin, layered artifact, not quite a word. The reflection then did something precise. It reached with its left hand and pressed the inside of the glass so hard the surface bowed outward by a hair's breadth. The mirror made a wet, dragging noise like fabric over a surface. Maya shouted, "Alex, get back!" and she stepped to pull me away. I hesitated because my fingers still had purchase on the frame. The reflection's palm matched mine, and it began to pull in a slow, steady motion. That was the climax. The glass reached and tried to take. I felt a physical yanking sensation, an odd pressure across my skin, as if the world on the other side favored its own physics. Maya grabbed my hoodie and Mr. Chen, who had come back into the doorway with a maintenance flashlight, lunged forward and grabbed my shoulder. The reflection increased pressure. The surface rippled and a sliver of cool air brushed my palm from the other side. "Let go!" Mr. Chen yelled, which is not an instruction I expected to receive from a landlord in the middle of a crisis. But his hand was steady and his voice cut through. Maya tightened her grip, and I forced my fingers out of the frame. The moment my skin left the glass, the pressure stopped. The mirror relaxed, and the reflected figure settled into a pose that matched us with a delayed smugness, as if it had nearly completed an action and been interrupted. I collapsed against the bathroom tile. My legs had gone numb and my breathing was loud in my ears. Maya crouched beside me and checked my wrist for bruises. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice had a brittle edge. I nodded and looked up. The reflection's face had shifted in a way that mattered. The scar on its eyebrow had moved, now mirrored the little scar on my own face but reversed. The reflection's mouth curved at a different angle than mine. I recognized myself only as a set of measurements. Chen took a step back and checked the mirror frame. He frowned at the seam again. Then he said something that rewired the room. "Is that token?" He pointed to the lanyard token in Maya's hand. "Where did she get that?" Maya him. He closed his eyes for a second, speaking like someone recalling a policy. "The building used to have tenants from Vermont a long time ago. They moved out after a fire in Unit 5. Some things get lost and some things are left in walls." His voice made the past concrete and small in the room. And it joined details in the mirror to things that had actually occurred here before we lived in this space. We checked around the apartment and found an object that should not have been visible. A child's sticker was embedded in the grot of the bathroom tile, a perfect round red star half covered by old cork. The sticker matched the object's shape in the mirror exactly. That discovery shifted my fear into a new angle, betrayal of reality into evidence of material crossover. We argued about calling the police. "Maya, if we call, they'll throw this out as prank or mental issue. Alex, you saw it pull. You felt it. Meh. Chen, if I log it and my insurance gets weird, I lose this building." He sounded small and practical and defensive in the same line. We made a decision that was not unanimous. Document and redact. We saved the phone clip to 2 drives, uploaded a secure copy to a cloud account under Maya's name, and erased the local file to limit casual discovery. Maya insisted we leave a physical trace. She took the token and taped it to the back of the bathroom door, where no one would see it easily, but where we could return. I wrote the date and a few words on the tape with a ballpoint. The act of labeling steadied me more than any explanation. Afterwards, silence took a different tone. The mirror sat like a thing that had tried and failed. The reflection mouthed something that might have been a name or might have been air. It was impossible to tell. I tasted metal in my mouth from adrenaline and from an old filling. Maya paced and Mr. Chen flapped through a pad of paper, writing a note about a complaint. I stood and held my keys until my knuckles paled. A new memory wedged itself into my head then, quick and precise. A small boy in a yellow raincoat standing at a bus stop and being ignored by the driver. I had not lived that. I had never been to that stop. The memory lodged in my thinking and brought with it a smell, wet tar and the lemon of lost candy. I could feel the memory like a bruise under my skin, specific and physical. That was the aftershock. An implant of an event I had not lived, now filing itself into my past. We argued about calling reporters versus scientists versus nothing. Maya, we tell people we trust, we don't make it big, not yet. Chen finally said, keep it off the official log for now. If this turns into a claim, I will take it with caution. I don't want vandals or curiosity seekers. His answer was a decision that redirected the story. It forced us to act privately and to build a chain of custody for evidence. We agreed, and the agreement was a small, careful contract between 3 people and 1 mirror. Before dawn faded, I pressed my palm to the glass one last time and the reflection matched instantly, without lag. For a single heartbeat our motions were synchronized. I felt a pull of grief in my chest that I did not name, something about losing a past or being replaced. I thought of the token on the back of the door and of the boy at the bus stop. Maya stood with her hands in her pockets and said, "You called me. That's what matters right now." She my name with the same blunt steadiness she had used when she arrived. I said nothing and kept my fingers flat on cold glass. We left the mirror standing in the bathroom when we went to bed in shifts. I slept with one eye half open and jerked awake twice, convinced I heard the scrape of glass. When I woke for good, there was a single new image in my head. A receipt folded into a wallet I did not own, stamped October 4th, midnight, gas station A. I wrote the numbers down before I could lose them. The chapter's conflict had resolved into a choice. I could hand the evidence to authorities and risk exposure or keep it close and build a private archive. I chose the latter. We packed the drives, the phone, and the token into a shoebox and locked it with an old padlock.
Ma!
Chen left a note under the door for record keeping. Maya, we burn the footage only if we have to. For now, we keep silent. She tapped the box with 2 fingers and then looked at me. Alex, we have to be practical. No one gets inside while we sort this. No one posts anything. She looked at my face like she was scanning a map. I agreed and slid the box beneath my couch. The final thing that happened before the chapter ended was a physical evidence inconsistency that altered our immediate plan. The sticker embedded in the grout had a torn edge that, when illuminated with Maya's flashlight, cast a tiny shadow on the tile. That shadow did not match the placement of the reflection sticker by a few millimeters. I matched the angles and realized the mirror's details were not just showing other people's things. They were choosing which parts of those things to keep. This discovery changed our question from where those images came from to why the glass selected certain elements. I sat on the floor, folded my knees to my chest, and felt the padlock press into my thigh through the shoebox. Maya crouched across from me and Mer. Chen stood in the doorway. We looked at the mirror across the room, and the reflection looked back with patience that was not human. It did not speak. The chapter ended with a hard, domestic sound, a knock at the front door, 3 sharp raps not from anyone we had invited. Maya held up her hand and whispered. Don't answer. We listened to the knock again, louder this time. The mirror's reflection tilted its head toward the door. I reached for my keys and felt the cool metal comfort of control. I said nothing, and the last lines of the night were our small breaths and the echo of someone knocking on a door we had not planned to open. Emotion root, suspicion. Emotion shifts, suspicion, panic, cautious resolution. Later panic, controlled action, wary acceptance. The knock came in a flurry, hard enough to rattle the cheap metal chain on the door. Open up! Mr. Cortez, it's Maya. Open the door now. The hallway light bled under the gap. I moved with a suspicion that tightened my jaw and made my hands hold the mug like a weapon. I had seen the mirror smile the night before. I had rinsed a chipped mug at the kitchenette sink and watched a face in the glass hold a grin a second after I stopped moving. That grin sat in my throat when I pulled the chain and swung the door wide. Mr. Cortez filled the frame first. He wore a tired winter coat and carried a hard shadow over one eye. "You answering?" he said. His voice cut quick. There were noises, and the downstairs tenant heard something. Maya's flashlight slashed across my shoes and stopped on the hallway runner. We smelled burning. I thought I heard. She swallowed and gave me both of her palms. I came up. The neighbor said, my name the way you call an animal back from the street. The energy in the hall shifted to accusation before I could speak. "There's nothing," I began. The word lodged. I felt the suspicion push me forward. I wanted to push it down, to smile and hand back normality, but the mirror behind the couch caught my eye. It was a tall, full-length piece leaning against the wall. I had shoved it there after the sink incident. The face in that glass watched us from a fraction of a second behind my movement. It mouthed a name I did not know. The movement was slow, deliberate. I moved my hand to the chain. Mr. Cortez's mouth hardened. It moved. "Maya, it moved after you." Her flashlight flicked to the mirror. She froze. There was a moment where three of us looked at the same object and read different pages. "Tell me what happened." "Mir." Cortez, his voice had landlord paperwork inside it. He stepped in, past the threshold, and the apartment smell, stale coffee, old laundry, window ozone, brushed him. I showed them the sink, the chipped mug, the smear of dish soap, still in the stainless basin. I told them my version in short sentences. I was rinsing a mug. The mirror smiled when I stopped. I didn't move. I froze, saying the sentence felt like handing over a file with a corner torn out. Maya repeated the action she had done, pointed at the mirror, jaw tight. "It smiled at you. It smiled like it knew you," she asked. Her voice kept bouncing between disbelief and a new, prickly fear. Mr. Cortez took a step closer to the mirror and looked past his own reflection. He muttered, "Ivy dealt with rats and leaks. Never a mirror that smiles." He called the name of a maintenance guy as if that would reframe the problem. I felt the shift from suspicion to urgent need for proof. I pulled my phone from my pocket without thinking and held it up toward the glass. "I'll record it," I said. Jonah answered on the other end before I could hit record. "You okay?" he said. My voice cracked. "Jonah, call me back in 2 minutes. I need you to see something." He didn't wait to question me. He let the line stay open and the speaker hissed the room. I set the phone on the table and aimed the front camera at the mirror. The reflection in the phone lens showed me holding the device. The mirror inside the frame started a scene I did not recognize. The glass showed a patch of kitchen I had not seen that day, a cereal box with a bright red logo I had never owned. Someone's hand brushed the rim of the counter, and then a woman sat where my chair stood. The woman in the mirror wore a coat I did not recognize. She laughed in a clipped, private way and mouthed the name Maya with a familiarity that dragged the neighbor's face into the shot. I found my mouth making sounds and Jonah's voice on the line went low. "What is that?" he said. He sounded like he had stopped breathing. Maya stepped back from the mirror as the footage looped. "That was my sister's sweater," she whispered. "That laugh, my mother used to do that exact half laugh." "How would it know that?" Mr. Cortez brushed his hand over his lip. "This is not a prank. Someone's recording it." He pulled out his keychain and fumbled for his phone like a man who had to make that step public. "We're recalling someone," he said. I pressed stop on the recording and then played the clip back. The screen showed a scene the apartment never held. I watched my living room become someone else's living room inside the glass. Jonah on the line typed answers I could hear in the rhythm of his voice. "Send it. Send it now. I'll forward it." "This isn't right." He made short sentences, the way he writes code. He wanted files. I wanted someone to tell me I had hallucinated the whole thing. The recording did not help. When I rewound, the mirror replayed the alternate scene with new frames that I did not recognize. Maya's hand went to her mouth. "It knew my sister's sweater," she said. "It knew my mother laughed like that." Her shoulders began to lift and drop quickly. Cortez took 2 steps backward. His landlord voice left him. "I don't want to be here, Maya." He looked at me with a question that had no good answer. They left the flashlight at the threshold to keep the room lit. The three of us stood in a triangle, the apartment walls pressed in. I wanted to shout and break the mirror. Instead, I walked to the bathroom, shut the door, and turned the exhaust fan to drown my breath. The bathroom mirror was small, a medicine-grade rectangle above the sink with a strip of rust at the bottom. The air inside the tile room held hot water and soap. I forced myself to stand close and demand a replay. I put my palm flat on the medicine mirror and said, out loud, "Play the scene from last night," saying it felt ridiculous, but speech anchors me. The reflection did not mimic. It held my eyes and then played a short clip. Me at the kitchen sink from some other morning, reaching for a pair of keys on a frayed lanyard that I do own. But in the clip another set of papers lay on the table next to them, documents stamped with a logo I had never seen. The figure across from me in the mirror touched my shoulder with a familiarity that made the skin along my collarbone crack. I had no memory of the person. I felt a new swell of disbelief push against the suspicion. I called Dra Ellison next. I needed the clinical distance of a professional. When she appeared on the video screen, she looked at me with that measured patience therapists have. "Talked to me about sleep and substances," she said. I listed nights without sleep. I refused to include alcohol. My sentences were clipped. She tilted her head and scribbled notes I could not see. "Tell me exactly what you see now," she said. Her voice carried through the speakers in a steady, doctorly rhythm. I held the phone up to the medicine mirror so she could see both of us. The reflection in the mirror moved a fraction late and then performed a gesture it had not yet given me in the apartment. It tapped 2 fingers in a specific clockwise rhythm on the glass. "Duh." Ellison froze for the first time on the call. "Did you see that?" she asked. Her voice dropped an octave. "Record it." "Record it now." She switched her tablet to record. The delay on her screen showed the same offset movement I had been watching alone. Her skepticism shifted. It slid from clinical distance to a careful, searching attention. "I'm going to get a colleague on this line," she said. Dun-T touched the mirror. Her instruction landed like a command I couldn't argue with. I sat on the tile and held the phone in both hands. The mirror in the bathroom replayed a private moment I had never lived. When the reflection mouthed a single, private name, Maya's name again, my disbelief curdled into a panic that caused my hands to shake. Meh. Cortez called someone I could not identify. He them slowly. "There's a resident with a broken head, or a broken mirror that shows other people's memories." I don't know which. His voice was threaded with a new fear. Maya packed her purse with motions that betrayed her. She kept glancing at the medicine mirror as if the same face might appear in any reflective surface. Jonah texted back a string of questions. "Who else has keys to the apartment? Anything missing? Any photos gone?" I answered each question with precise sentences. Keys accounted for, no photos moved, nothing missing from the living room except the sense of ordinary continuity. When Maya kissed my cheek, a quick peck that felt like an assessment, she said, "If it can show me my sister's sweater, it can show other things." Her voice was small but urgent. "It knows names." That statement changed the balance in the room. Before, I wanted to prove it. Now I wanted to hide with the mirror covered. The suspicion moved into fear. My heart pumped a quick, hot rate and my fingers had trouble finding the edge of my shirt. I wrapped a towel over the medicine mirror and took it off only to check the phone line. "Dra." Ellison's face had gone from clinical calm to a quiet, professional disruption. She for a still frame and told me to email the clip. Her colleague, a forensic psychologist named Ruiz, said very few words but kept his camera focused on the reflection. The reflection, on the other hand, performed politeness with a lag. It smiled a second after I stopped smiling. It mouthed names I had never heard. The climax happened in the tiled doorway between the bathroom and the living room. I had placed my palm on the outside of the medicine mirror to steady my breath when the glass shifted. The reflection's hand rose from inside the glass and pressed flat to the surface opposite my palm. My own hand was on the towel on the sink. My fingers curled in real motion while the reflected hand reached independently. I felt the pressure of an idea like a physical knock. The mirror was not mimicking. It initiated contact. Dunt. Maya cried from the living room, but the sound arrived too late. The reflected palm flattened and a smear of condensation traced the outline where glass met air. I leaned toward the doorway, and the reflected hand left a faint, oily print on the inside of the medicine mirror. The print looked like a wet fingerprint that had been wiped quickly. I heard Dr. Ellison's call crack. Document that contact. Ruiz clicked his tablet. Jonas' voice on the line said, pause the feed. Freeze frame. We all tried to pin the moment into pixels. Then the reflection bowed its head in a slow, deliberate half nod and slid backward out of frame. The motion was not mine. It was not anyone else in the apartment. I stumbled back and found my mouth making a new decision for me. I ripped the larger living room mirror off the wall and dragged it into the bathtub. My actions were clumsy and controlled. I shoved the mirror face down into the water and stood on the rim, bracing. The thunder of my breath filled the bathroom as if to keep the glass from moving again. Outside the bathroom door, the apartment registered in small, sharp events. Maya put up both hands and said, "Cortez, you called who?" He answered with the name of a number I did not know. He handed me his phone and let me listen. The voice on the other end asked for details and then used a phrase none of us expected. Contain and isolate potential reflective breach. The caller spoke in a clipped official tone. "Mr." Cortez repeated the phrase like a man reading a script he did not understand. The group left on a shaky rotation. Maya took one last look at the medicine mirror through the crack in the bathroom door, and then walked out into the stairwell. "Ma." Cortez followed, saying he would check with his management. Jonah sent a dozen short messages. Save everything. Backup to cloud. Send every clip. Dr. Ellison. She would file a formal report and told me not to remove the towel from the medicine cabinet. She hesitated and then added, "Do not sleep facing any mirror tonight." Her clinical instruction landed like an order from someone who had just had her basic map of reality redraw itself. I sat on the cold tile and counted the seconds until dawn. The towel sagged over the mirror like a temporary curtain. Every reflective surface in the apartment faced the wall or lay covered. I checked the video footage again. The clip showed a scene I had not lived. The person at my table with the red cereal box, a hand that touched a paper stamped with a logo I could not place. That paper became a new question lodged in my throat. The suspicion that had started the night now tunneled deeper. My fingers traced the scar above my left eyebrow without thinking. There was a twist I had not expected. In one of the stills, behind the other person at my table, a battered key ring hung on a hook by the door. It was the exact frayed lanyard I keep by my keys. The clip suggested that at some point the apartment had held another life, using my own objects in different combinations. The image changed how I understood the earlier sink scene. I had assumed the mirror showed random images. The mirror was showing reassemblies of my things placed with other people, as if it were re-staging versions of my life. That revelation forced a new action. I emailed the clip to a small list Jonna had created. Dr. Ellison, Jonna and one other contact Jonna added with an address from an organization mir. Cortez named without explanation. Then I sat up and took a small, precise set of steps. I opened the kitchen drawer where I keep receipts and counted them out. I compared dates. I photographed each staple and each grocery label and sent them in separate files. If the mirror was remixing items, I wanted a log of which items had been where and when. By dawn, the apartment felt like a documented scene. Meh. Cortez returned briefly and left a note under the front door that he had called a number and reported the situation. Maya texted only once. If anything else happens, call me, I am next door. Jonah came by with 2 hard drives labeled with neat black tape. He wore a hoodie and looked at the covered mirrors like a man who had stepped into a crime scene. We can at least make a copy, he said. If anything shows up, we have the file chain. He set down the drives and asked me for passwords, which I gave him with hands that trembled. The final event of the night did not resolve anything. It reoriented the stakes. I unwrapped the medicine mirror for a single, careful moment to photograph the oily fingerprint the reflected hand had left. The mark was faint and smeared, like someone had brushed the glass with an oily thumb and then dragged a sleeve through it. When I zoomed the phone image, I noticed an imprint inside the smear, a small, pressed symbol I did not recognize. It looked like the corner of a stamped logo. My breath stopped in a dry, exact way. The symbol matched the edge of the paper I had seen in the mirror clip. I typed the symbol into the search bar as concrete digits on the screen. The query returned nothing exact. Jonah suggested we send the stills to a small online forum he trusted, one that tracks anomalous objects and odd evidence. I hesitated. The last time I had posted online it felt like confessing. But we needed more eyes to trace the logo. I attached the stills and the video and wrote one sentence. Evidence of reflective breach. Need help identifying logo. Jonah hit send. The responses began within the hour. Most were speculation and noise. One reply came from an address Jonah recognized as an archival researcher. That mark is similar to a courier service used by small private contractors. It is not public. I'll ask a contact. Another reply came from a username that asked whether the mirror could show alternate lives. The tone in that message was clinical and personal at once. Be careful where you point recording devices, it said, and then oddly. Cover all mirrors. Do not try to touch the reflection skin. The statement read like a rule. I wrapped every mirror in the apartment in bath towels, duct taped the edges, and sealed the gaps. The living room mirror lay tubed and wet in the bathtub, water pooled beneath it. I left the bathroom door cracked and a towel over the medicine mirror. My actions felt like building a dam. The dam did not fix the problem. It only put a slow weight on it. Night moved toward morning. The official number mirror Cortez called left the impression of a larger system. They for precise timestamps, copies of the video, and an inventory of objects with photographs. They used language like containment and isolation protocol, and then redacted most of what they would do next. They mirror Cortez not to let strangers into the apartment and to direct everyone to a specific line. They did not give a name I could latch to. They offered instead a promise of an agent who would call within 24 hours. Before they left, Maya murmured one last thing. You should not sleep facing any mirror, she said again. She squeezed my shoulder with a quick, human pressure and then walked down the stairs. I closed the door and slid the chain into place. The apartment felt registered now. Each item had been photographed, emailed, and logged. I had made choices that traced the mirror's actions. I recorded, I called professionals, I catalogued objects, I sealed reflective surfaces. Each step moved me from proving the anomaly toward trying to reclaim a sense of ownership over my life. The chapter ended with a concrete, situational decision. I taped a note to the inside of the medicine cabinet door and underlined it twice. Do not remove the towel unless an agent with confirmed credentials instructs otherwise. I typed the same sentence into an email and sent it to Jonah and Dra. Ellison. Then I sat with my back against the bathroom door and listened to the building settle. My chest tightened and I kept my hand on the scar above my left eyebrow, a small, familiar thing that anchored me. Outside, the stairwell lamp clicked and went to its timed sleep. Inside, the covered mirrors held their quiet. The last sound I remember before trying to sleep was Jonah's final text. If they come, record everything. If they ask questions, answer only what you know. I shut my eyes with a plan and with no illusion that the plan would work. The mirror had shown other people using my things. It had reached through glass. It had left a mark that matched an unknown logo. The next day would be about tracing who had handled my objects, who had keys, and who had placed papers in my apartment at an earlier time. For now, the apartment was locked around a single, pressing fact. The reflection had stopped being a copy. It had begun to act on its own, emotion route. Suspicion. They knocked twice, sharp enough that the chain on my door jumped, and the taller officer said, Cortez, we need you to sign this. I opened the door to a blue, uniformed pair and a folded envelope stamped with black bars. I held the envelope in my hand and my suspicion hit first. The hallway mirror behind me showed my face already bent over the paper. Eyes narrowed the way I had never seen them. The face in the glass read the notice with a calm I did not feel, and it looked up at me a full half-second before I did. Suspicion pushed my jaw tight. I did not step back. I let the taller officer, Ruse, push inside with the envelope held between his palms because I needed witnesses to what came next. I introduced nothing. I let them see the mirror. Look, I said to Ruiz, and the shorter officer, the landlord, and the building manager stopped at the threshold. They all turned to the hallway mirror at the same time I did. The reflection did not turn in sync. It was the first concrete proof I had left of the mismatch. Proof that my memory, whatever it had been, no longer matched what the glass kept. Ruiz, Miss Cortez, we have to serve you notice. This is an incident report with redactions. Someone reported an event connected to your apartment. He held the envelope out, and the hallway light slid across the paper, showing the black bars and a typed header. Maya pushed past the landlord and the officer and said, You kept them from me. You kept me from what happened. Her voice was a short, urgent thing. No melodrama, no pleading, only pressure. I remembered the knock from the night before. The way the mirror had smiled a second after I stopped rinsing a cup. I did not go back to that memory to wallow. I told them the exact sequence of actions I could verify. I was cooking noodles when I heard a knock. I said. I rinsed the pot and set it down. The mirror smiled after I stopped. Maya's face tightened. You looked different then. She said, You hit me when I came through the door. You had a cut by your eyebrow. I felt my hands go cold. She named a bruise and a wound I could not find on my face. Maya stepped in closer. You promised you'd stop leaving at night, she said. You promised you'd answer your phone. She kept saying my name, as if repeating it would pull me back into a timeline both of us agreed on. Maya, I said, I don't remember hitting you. I don't remember the cut. My voice was measured because I had learned to string sentences into proof. Maya slapped the table with an open palm, then explained this. She held a photograph edged, the corners soft, and placed it on my kitchen counter under the overhead bulb. The flash had left a hot white circle on the print. I saw my face in the photograph and the scar was reversed, on the right side of my brow. I had a different scar in the mirror now. The landlord, Miss Hagen, crouched and picked the photograph up. This was pulled from the tenant's surveillance log, he said. From the hallway camera outside your door on the 23rd. The CCTV shows you at 11:04 p.m. with someone else leaving the building. He looked at Ruiz. He'd done something to a neighbor and left in a hurry. Ruiz tapped his pen against the envelope. We need a statement. Cortez, the voice of procedure carried a small, steady pressure. Sign here. Initial that. Dunty touched the sealed portion. I checked the hallway camera on the landlord's phone. The clip was 30 seconds long, grainy, lit by the sodium light outside the building. In the feed I saw myself walking out, head down, hand in my hoodie pocket. Then the camera cut for half a second and returned to show the hallway empty. On the frame before the cut my face was calm. After the cut the camera showed the reflection in the mirror lingering for a beat where no one stood. I said the words out loud. The mirror is acting as if it remembers things I done. Ruiz looked at me and did not smile. We can entertain claims about sentient glass, he said. But there is enough here to open an investigation. We have neighbors who saw different hours on their door logs. We have a complaint. He folded the envelope and pushed it toward me again. Emotion shifted from suspicion to defensive disbelief. I pushed back the chair and said, "Then look at the photograph. Where's my scar?" My fingers worked the edge of the picture like it was a live wire. Maya's eyes flew to my left eyebrow. "It's on the right there," she said, "and you touched that scar when you left. You traced it and said my name." The room narrowed into the photograph and the envelope and the mirror. The reflection in the bathroom door was a half step behind my questions. The landlord asked, "Who is Maya?" "Maya, I'm Maya. I used to live across the hall. I keep my keys, I keep receipts." I remember what I saw. Her sentences were clipped and explicit. She had a rhythm that cut through my attempts to rationalize. I heard the officer say, "We need statements from neighbors, SCEC-TV door logs. If anything else shows up, file it." He wrote with a pen that made a light scratch on the pad. He used my full name and my apartment number. The paper looked authoritative and final. I felt a pressure to cooperate and a counter, pressure to hide something that was mine. An evidence bag sat on the landlord's counter. Inside was a small smear of dark residue cut from my hallway mirror. Mirror. Hagen lifted a gloved finger and smudged it across the plastic top as if to show it. "We took this from the frame last night," he said. "Tenant complaint. It doesn't match a fingerprint. It's more like oil and something else, fine metallic dust." He held it up to the hallway light, and the dust winked like tiny slivers of glass. I had no explanation for it. "Maya, you were different when I saw you," she my name twice more. Then she did something that stopped the room. She walked across the apartment to the bathroom door and tugged it open. The mirror there caught the overhead kitchen light and threw it back in a thin square. The reflection inside the bathroom moved just after I moved. That fraction of a second had become a chasm between the people in my apartment and the person the glass displayed. The other officers looked at the mirror and their brows dropped. "There it is, Ruiz. That's not normal." Ruiz's voice was not mocking. It was the steady voice of someone acknowledging a report that required documentation. I reached for the mirror. The reflection raised a hand of its own accord and traced a reversed scar along its brow, my scar, but mirrored, then pressed a fingertip to the glass. The fingertip dimmed the reflection for a second and left a tiny circular smear on the mirror's surface. My hand moved as if to follow the motion and stopped when Maya's hand closed on my wrist. "Don't touch it," she said. "It did something to me." The sentence landed like a small blow. Emotion shifted again. Disbelief became fear. My stomach went hard. I tried to speak and my voice came out thin. "Maya," I said, "what did it do to you?" She kept hold of my wrist, and her palm had a faint line of dried blood at the knuckle. "You hit me and then you looked at me like you didn't know me," she said. "You kept saying a name that wasn't mine, and you laughed when I cried. Then you left." She looked at the mirror now and her pupils tightened. "The photograph shows you tracing your scar and saying my name." The mirror did that motion. "You didn't." The officers argued in quick lines about procedure. "We need to secure the scene. Ruiz, we need statements. We need to take that mirror down as evidence if its surface is contaminated," the landlord said. "I can remove it, but it's heavy. It's nailed to the wall. I can call maintenance." He sounded like someone who wanted to remove a dangerous object from the building. "Maya, no, don't take it down. Cover it. Tape a note. Let it stay where it is so we can see if it keeps acting." Her voice had the flat certainty of someone who had been convinced and now wanted proof. I lifted the sealed envelope like it was a hot plate. Paper rustled. The redacted lines showed nothing, but the margins had stamped codes. Incident log 2311, and a line that read subject, preserved interface, with black bars covering the main paragraphs. I had never seen these words on any of my other mail. On the envelope's back was a paperclip hold and a typed line. "Do not remove from premises until processed. Ruiz, we still need your signature acknowledging service." I signed on the bottom line with a ballpoint pen that wobbled for a second in my hand. "Maya, You remember the mug now. Her voice was quick. She named the chipped mug from Chapter 1, and the moment the mirror smiled a second after the rinse. You were rinsing a chipped mug, and then you froze. Then the mirror smiled, you me that, remember. She forced me to speak it aloud. I repeated the sequence, but did not use the words they had used earlier. I said the actions precisely. Rinse, stop, see grin. The officers listened and wrote the sequence into their notes. The landlord sat at the kitchen table and placed the photograph and the envelope between his palms. We can place a notice on the door, he said. We can tape a sheet over the mirror. We can ask neighbors for footage. If anyone else has mismatched recollections, tell them to keep records. He had a practical rhythm to his sentences. He spoke in small, discrete tasks. I felt myself great against each task, because none of them healed the fact that the glass could perform movements I did not make. Maya's voice dropped low. We need to know if it's taking things from you, she said. If it's replacing you. Her words were short, matched to a concrete fear I could measure. Losing control of what I had lived. The room fell into a series of practical motions. Ruse for my keys and my phone. Mr. Hagan unplugged the hallway lamp and set it on the counter. The officers described chain of custody with the same patient cadence they would use for physical evidence, logs, timestamps, witnesses. I went to the bathroom and checked other reflective surfaces. The kettle on the stove reflected my face reversed. The window showed my outline backward. A spoon on the counter caught my profile in a thin line. In each surface the reflection lagged, sometimes by a fraction, sometimes by a clean half second. I filmed a short clip on my phone. I waved my hand, and the spoon's edge showed the wave come after my hand. I showed the clip to Ruiz. He watched and did not blink. We will add this to the report, he said. We need to be methodical. If property is involved, we file a paper chain. He took my phone and backed up the clip to his device. A mid-chapter escalation arrived when the taller officer left briefly to call headquarters, and the landlord produced a second photograph, pulled from his building files. That photograph showed me in a hallway argument 2 months ago with a man who did not exist in my memory. The man had a coat with a slim, odd lapel, the same odd seam that the reflection wore in his mirrored clothing. Hagan, this was in the lobby. It shows you standing with someone else. The other person left before the camera returned. The room centered on the photograph and logic shifted. The reflection wasn't only making gestures. It wore clothing detail that did not belong to anyone who should have been in my life. Maya demanded, why is my timeline different? The demand was a small human beat. Why am I the one who remembers being hurt? She, the name of the man who had been in my photograph. He used to work night maintenance on the 15th floor. I saw him walk past the door. I remember him touching my arm, she his name. The officers exchanged a look and Ruiz, Mayor, do you want to press charges? Mayor answered with a crisp, single line, not yet. I want answers. That line forced everyone to change tack from immediate arrest to investigation. We organized. The officers took statements from me and Maya. Mayor. Hagan logged Psych-TV timestamps and gave Ruse a written note listing residents who reported odd recollections. The landlord said, I'll hold this property under evidence until a supervisor signs off. I'll create a key log for the mirror's removal if needed. He wrote in his ledger with a blunt pencil. I watched the motions and tried to find a center. The reflection performed a demonstration that pushed the chapter to its peak. It pressed a fingertip to the bathroom glass, then smiled with a small, precise motion that copied the photograph's reversed scar tracing. The smile was not a simple curve. It was a learned expression, the sort a person practices until the muscles know it. My hand moved without my intention and banged the sink. The sound shocked everyone into a reaction. Maya lunged and grabbed the sink edge. Don't try to break it, she said in one hard line. She had thought about shattering the surface, and she would have, if not for the officers and the landlord stopping her with a hand on her wrist. The climax arrived minutes later when I tried to break the mirror myself. Ms. Hagen's wrench lay on the counter where maintenance had dropped it. I picked it up and stepped into the bathroom. The reflection matched my step, but it moved a fraction earlier and positioned itself so that when I swung, it caught the motion in a way that pushed the glass inward from the inside. It was not just imitation. The reflection pressed a translucent hand against the inside of the pane and matched my face with a mouth that formed my name. The sound of my name from the other side was thin and layered, like an echo recorded on old tape. I struck the glass. It made a dull thump and did not shatter. The mirror took my blow and shivered, and the pane glowed faintly where my wrench hit. The metallic dust that had been lifted in the evidence bag rose into a small, static halo inside the glass and then settled. I hit again with my shoulder. The mirror took the impact and did not break. The reflection smiled and mouthed. Cortez, the officers shouted for me to stop, and Ruiz's voice was suddenly edged with genuine alarm. "Step away from the mirror, Mr. Cortez," he barked, emotion tilted into urgent fear. My breathing came in short, controlled pulls. I had to make a decision. Smash it and possibly cut a hole into whatever pressed from the other side, or leave it and let the reflection keep carving my life with its gestures. Maya's hand clamped the wrench out of my grip with a single, forceful movement. "We leave it covered," she said. Her voice had a command cadence. She pulled a sheet from the linen closet while Ruiz and Mr. Hagen and I moved as a single, clumsy unit. We wrapped the mirror in a bed sheet and taped it along the edges with duct tape. The covered glass bulged slightly where something inside traced a hand. On the other side of the fabric, a faint outline pushed and left a horizontal streak where it had pressed its palm. The surface under the sheet was warm to the touch, and when I pressed my palm to the taped fabric, I felt a dry heat that made the hair on my arm stand up. That physical detail fixed the thing into reality. The glass did not merely reflect, it exerted warmth and pressure. After we sealed the sheet, Ruiz radioed headquarters and said, "We secured potential evidence. We'll return with a supervisor and a removal team." He turned to me and wrote something on his pad. "Until then," he said, "you have an order not to remove the covering or tamper with the item. We will issue temporary safety guidance for the building." The phrase sounded official and distant at once. I did not like the idea of waiting for a team whose training might not include whatever this was. I walked the apartment with the officers and Maya and checked mirrors and reflective surfaces. Every polished black surface showed a tiny lag. The kettle, the spoons, the window pane facing the street, each surface had a slight misalignment between my motion and the mirrored motion. On the window, a figure in the reflection shaded its eyes and looked down the street at a man who was not there. I filmed that too. Ruiz kept asking practical questions. Who else had keys? When did I first notice what was unusual last week? My answers grew shorter with each question. We argued next about what to do with the photograph. Ruiz they would keep copies. Maya wanted the original. Mr. Hagen seemed torn. He touched the corner of the photograph and then handed it to me. "You should have this," he said. "For your records." The photograph felt like a small, dense weight in my palm. It shifted what I thought I had known about the hours I had lost. The officers left a paper tag taped to the apartment door. It read in plain font, "Evidence pending. Do not remove. Contact Officer Ruiz for clarification." The tag made the hallway feel official and exposed at once. As Ruiz and his partner stepped down the stairwell, the building's fluorescent light hummed above their heads, and the landlord followed them part of the way, promising to track camera footage with a link to his building logs. Maya stood in the kitchen and kept saying my name in little bursts. She kept testing me with questions about times, people, and events we had shared. Each answer I gave hollowed something out of me or filled a gap with a new, unwanted detail. She used my name to anchor me to what she had seen. The repeated use of my name in short sentences had the function of reattaching me to a shared timeline. You loved me, on the porch, she said. You'd stop working nights. You promised we'd move in together. Those were facts I could confirm in messages on my phone, but the photograph, the scratch on my eyebrow, and the mirror's gesture contradicted them. The chapter's resolution had to address three things: the officer's procedural control, the photograph's proof of altered detail, and the reflection's demonstrated autonomy. We created a plan in short, practical sentences. Ruiz would file a clear incident report noting the mirror's anomalous behavior and keep the covered mirror under observation until a specialist arrived. Meh. Hagen would collect neighbor statements and pull sextivy logs from the building manager's archive. Maya insisted on one personal action. She demanded I move out for the night. She it plainly, you leave with us. You don't stay alone, the line cut through my hesitation. I packed a small bag. I stuffed the photograph into a pocket. My cheap analog watch felt heavier than usual on my wrist. Maya took my keys and looped them on the frayed lanyard I always wore. The act of her taking the keys was a concrete motion that shifted responsibility from me to someone else. She blinked and then led me out to the stairwell. Don't take the elevator, she said. Stay in sight. Do not go back into the apartment alone. Her commands were short and specific. They were the kind of sentences that create concrete safety. Before I left, I went back to the bathroom and pressed my palm to the taped sheet. The outline of a hand remained visible where something pushed from the inside. I held my palm there and felt the dry heat again. I said, if it can press from the inside, maybe it can press through. The sentence was an attempt to clarify risk into a concrete hypothesis. Maya put her hand over mine and did not let go. Then we don't give it another chance. We document everything and we leave it covered. She repeated my name and then opened the door. We walked down the stairs in a thin line. Miami, Ruiz, Hagen. The building smelled like detergent and old carpet. At the bottom of the stairwell, the officers paused and Ruiz turned to me. Keep your phone on, he said. Save everything. Do not delete anything. If you see anything else, call us immediately. His voice had the same practical cadence he used on paperwork, but his eyes looked like someone who had just seen evidence that made little sense. Outside, the street felt ordinary under the sodium light. A neighbor shouted across from a second-floor window, and someone closed a door 3 apartments down. I kept my hand on the photograph in my pocket because the paper felt like an anchor that confirmed something the mirror had done. Maya kept asking short questions. I answered as best I could. We walked to a car and she shoved the key into the ignition. Her fingers were steady when she started the engine. She did not let me drive. Back in the apartment, the covered mirror lay as a silent rectangle. I could not tell if the sheet bulged anymore. Before we left, Maya scribbled a note and taped it across the sheet with duct tape. The note read, "Do not remove. Subject shows memory displacement evidence." Her handwriting was angular. She signed it with her name and then added mine underneath. That act sealed the apartment, small bureaucracy around the glass. It felt like a practical attempt to claim the object and name it as dangerous. We drove away with the photograph between us in the glove compartment, and the officers promising to return with a removal team. Maya kept glancing at the side mirror and then away. Each glance was a movement that measured the plausibility of the reflection's autonomy. I kept repeating a list of things in my head. Skeevy timestamps, the photograph, the smear found on the frame, the covered handprint. Naming those things made them into evidence rather than threats. When we stopped at a diner and ordered coffee, I found I could answer the waiter's questions and sign my name without further lapses. But every so often my eyes caught the reflection of my hands around the cup, and they lagged. A minute would pass and the reflected hands in the window would move a fraction of a second behind mine. I set the cup down to listen to the ceramic settle. Maya reached across the table and touched my forearm. "We will get you into a room at my sister's place," she said. "We will make copies of the photographs and send them to Ruiz. We will get the footage, short directives again." She moved like someone making a plan of resource steps. I slept in a startlingly ordinary spare bed that night. I left a lamp on and my phone on the charger. Maya stayed in the living room and watched recordings from my sex TV in the dim light. She clicked through files in concise motions. Play, pause, zoom. She wrote down timestamps and the names of neighbors she would call. She made lists with exact times. Her lists were the opposite of the mirror's shifting sequences. Each time we found a cut in a tape or an edit in a frame, her hand punched down a time. She would read the time aloud, say my name, and then say, "We log this." The repetition made the anomalies into records. At dawn, Ruiz called and said a supervisor would be there by mid-morning with an evidence removal team who had clearance for technical anomalies. He also said the incident would be filed and a supervisor would contact the housing authority. The voice at the other end of the line had the same bureaucratic cadence but less finality than I expected. After the call, Maya packed a bag with 3 small items: the photograph, a spare toothbrush, and my old apartment key. She me to keep the watch. I slid it off and handed it to her. Her fingers closed over the band and she said, "If anything else changes, we have records." Those words were both a command and a contract. We went back to the apartment hours later with 2 men in plain jackets and a supervisor who carried a clipboard. They moved with a slower, careful motion. The supervisor wore latex gloves and carried a small sealed box of tools. He introduced himself as Supervisor Lane and said, "We will document, then remove, then store." He spoke in a voice that meant to reassure. He examined the taped sheet, ran a gloved finger along the duct tape, and took a photograph of the taped sheet from 4 angles. He lifted a corner of the sheet briefly and then taped it back down. He recorded the bulge, the faint outline, and the smear on the inside. "Lane, we will catalog the object as a potential evidence piece. We will need to document temperature, pressure, and any residue." He had a handheld scanner and took thermal readings from the sheet's surface. The device chimed and recorded a small variance in heat at the spot where the impression had been. That variance registered on a scale on his pad, and he read it off in a single line, "Notable." He wrote a note and then sealed the top of his clipboard. Ruiz and the other officers completed witness statements. Lane explained they had a materials team on call and someone from a municipal research lab who specialized in surface anomalies. He asked in careful sentences that the lab would photograph the mirror, then remove it and take it to a secure facility. Until that team can process the object, we ask that you do not remove the covering or otherwise interact with the mirror. Me if I had taken any items from the mirror's vicinity. I showed him the photograph and my phone full of clips. He made copies on his pad. When they wheeled the mirror out carefully, with a padded frame and a 2-person lift, its covered shape was heavier than I expected. The removal team placed it on a wheeled cart and rolled it past the kitchen light. I watched the sheet bulge once more, and a faint outline of a hand slid up the inside as if to wave goodbye. The supervisor stopped the cart and took 3 photographs. Then they left. The hallway door closed behind them with a dull thump, and the building sighed back to its ordinary hum. The next day, Ruiz called and read a short, formal statement. The mirror had been logged and transported to a secured municipal facility. They had found metallic dust on the frame and a thermal variance on the pane. The lab would run more tests, and that he would forward any findings as soon as he received them. His voice had the same steady cadence, but an added tightness around the words. "We will keep your statement on file, Mr. Cortez," he said. Maya and I went with the photograph to a trusted friend who photographed it again and scanned it. The scan showed the reversed scar and a small fingerprint on the bottom corner that did not belong to me. We sent copies to Ruiz and Lane. The words on the envelope, subject, Preserved interface stayed in my head because they named something I had no vocabulary for. Naming it helped make the unknown into something a team could approach. 2 weeks later, the lab sent a brief update. Samples of the frame contained a combination of metallic particulates, fine organic residue, and trace mineral compounds the analysts could not immediately identify. The pane surface showed micro abrasions inconsistent with normal wear. The report was careful and clinical. It did not claim agency. It listed measurements, chemical compounds, and a request for extended research. The lab's email signature contained a contact number and a request to withhold distribution pending peer review. Maya and I held on to the photograph and the phone footage. We made copies, timestamps, and logs. We spoke to neighbors who had small mismatches in memory. 2 who said they remembered different times of day. 1 who insisted a man had come through their corridor and left no trace. Each new testimony was a precise line. Time, observable action, name used if any. Those details filled in a pattern that suggested the mirror had been manipulating movement into its own recorded gestures. Emotion shifted from fear to resigned method. I learned to speak facts about myself without filling the gaps with speculation. I told people what I had done and what the footage showed. I stopped trying to argue with the mirror's choices and instead built a paper trail. Maya kept doing the same. List, photograph, timestamp. Her methodical habit calmed some of my panic by putting each anomaly into a file. In the end, the lab returned one concrete, troubling finding. The mirror surface contained traces of elongated crystalline filaments embedded just beneath the glass plane. Those filaments refracted light in ways tests described as time, phase micro refraction patterns. The lab would publish the full details later. For us, the phrase meant something specific. The glass had embedded structure that altered how motion and light registered across its surface. It was not magical language. It was a technical observation that still implied we had been interfacing with an object that recorded and replayed movements differently than other surfaces. Maya and I sat across from each other the night the report came. We did not use the words replace or steal. We listed exact losses. 2 hours missing, a bruise that belonged to a photograph, a reversed scar in an image. We kept the list as neutral facts, short lines, photograph scanned, 60V frame cut, fingerprint unknown. The list made a kind of slow order out of chaos. The final concrete action of the chapter occurred when Ruiz phoned with a single instruction. The municipal lab requested custody of the original photograph and my phone for cross-referencing with the mirror sample. I handed them over at the police station and watched Officer Ruiz seal an evidence bag with a practiced motion. He tapped the bag thrice and wrote the chain of custody slip with my name on it. "You have to keep backups," he said, handing me photocopies. I signed again. We closed the chapter by covering the files in a physical folder, give copies to Maya, and then locking them into a small metal box she brought from her car. We made an inventory list. The last event in the apartment before we left for the night was a simple, concrete act. I taped a small typed note to my bathroom door that read, "If it presses the sheet again, call Ruiz immediately. Do not enter alone." I signed it and then twisted the doorknob, leaving it closed. We left the building under streetlight and rain, and the covered mirror stayed behind, labeled and logged. The final image I carried was not symbolic, only physical. The heat where its hand had pressed against the interior fabric, the duct tape frayed from small pulls, and the photograph folded in my pocket with the reversed scar. Those objects and their recorded details made up the conclusion. The officers took custody, the lab catalogued the pane and found unusual filaments, and Maya and I left with copies and a plan to keep records. I do not pretend the problem was solved. The lab wanted time. The officers wanted patience. Maya wanted immediate action. I wanted both. The chapter ends on a concrete beat. I locked my apartment door, left my spare key with Maya, and walked away while the echo of my name, spoken by a mouth that was not mine, lingered in my head. The mirror had been removed and logged, and for now its surface could not press against us. But the photograph remained, the phone footage remained, and the evidence list sat in a metal box under her bed. The last sentence of this entry is a set of instructions taped to the inside of that box. Call Ruiz, copy files. Do not let the mirror's gestures be the only record. That note is the last thing I carried out of the apartment that night.